You're not just competing with the corporate in the next country. You're now competing with every crazy person in a basement because he can spin up 100 agents and completely disrupt your industry.
I've started to use OpenClaw, and I have to say it's pretty amazing. Some things that I have encountered already. It was kind of mind-blowing to have those intelligent systems having a chat with each other.
We need to do something with AI. This is the phrase that everybody says, right? Something with AI. Nobody has a clue what that something is yet. They had like a super watered down version of Copilot, and they use it as a glorified Google, as I believe most people do.
Their CEO was going on about how they were behind with AI. All of the managers need to step up to be a role model in AI usage. But what do they have? They went with ChatGPT Enterprise and that's it.
Yeah. This is million years of evolution. And now we got this AI layer, this artificial layer that connects us to our second brains. And we're not even talking about a second brain anymore. We're talking about multiple brains. If you want to 10x that or 100x that, yeah, then you put everything on OpenClaw or NemoClaw type of agents.
The entire argument for humanoid robots is that our environment is built for humans, right? So it needs to adapt to the environment first before we can adapt the environment itself. But there are environments that are...
Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of the Singularity Service podcast, where we talk about what is coming, what it means, and what to do. Episode number 6 of this year, and we have a special. Today we have our first guest on the podcast, Jelmer. You're a great friend of a group that we very often reference here. It started with the title Time Travelers, but now it's Space Time Travelers. It's a group of friends and entrepreneurs of 8 people that basically is the soul of everything that we do. We meet a lot of times over dinners and we discuss so many things. So it's really great to have you here in the pod. What's really funny and why I'm really happy that you're here, often when we do presentations and you are present, Aragorn always refers to you as the smartest man alive. So that makes it very special that you're here with a background as McKinsey. You're a venture builder. You've built many different ventures. So really happy to have you here, man.
Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to be here and honored to be the first guest. I didn't know that. And thanks for the wonderful introduction.
Hey, what we often do is look back at what happened in the past week. So is there anything that stood out for you in the past week, Jelmer?
I mean, many things, but it's always fun when these things show up in your own day-to-day life, right? And I was talking to my girlfriend. My girlfriend's also a podcast producer. She has had this Wix website. She's had it for maybe 8 years or so. She kept talking to me about, and I still need to update my website. I don't have time to update my website. I'm like, are you still with this Wix website? Let's check out, what are you paying for this actually? So, turns out for email alone, she's paying close to 100 euros every 3 months or something. In 1 year, I think she spends well over 1,000 euros just to have a Wix website. So I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. We can definitely fix this. So I through her Wix website in Claude, and I asked it, please analyze this website, look at the fonts, look at the color use, look at the spacing, and create a style guide for me, right? I want any design element in there. I want buttons, I want cards, etc. So it did that. It created like a perfect style guide based on what was already there. Asked it to improve it. It improved it. Made it more modern. And then I asked it, okay, can you now generate a website for a podcast producer, include all the best practices, and give me just a perfect website, right? Based on this style guide. In a few minutes time, I had created a website that was better than the original, at least in my opinion. And it's just a simple HTML file, something she could just upload practically for free, right? And she could get off Wix. Now, we haven't made the transition yet, but I think she's still getting used to the idea of how cheap and easy this is. But in the coming weeks, it will happen.
So the moment you have it, please share it. And we put it in the show notes as well, because people are listening to this and definitely want to see what Claude has created out of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
My week was pretty crazy as well. The moment that OpenClaw was announced.
I was supposed to ask that. Yeah, so for the listeners, Patrick said, Aragorn, you never ask how I'm doing. So yeah, I promised that I would do it, but now he just took the opportunity away from me because, okay.
Yeah,
how has your week? Patrick, how has your week been? Is there anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, I absolutely have something to share because the moment that OpenClaw was released, like I was, okay, I want this, I need this. But everybody in our team said, Pat, don't do it. It's risky. Don't go into it. But the stories that I hear on all the pods and all the great things that you can do with it. And I needed to do it. So I bought a Mac Mini, I bought a screen, I bought a keyboard. And that's also why I'm sitting different, because I don't have space for all these screens now here. But I've started to use OpenClaw and configure it. And I have to say, it's pretty amazing. Some things that I have encountered already. The setup for me was more difficult than I expected, but I'm not so super technical. And I also took the opportunity to learn a lot, to work a lot in Terminal. I never am work in Terminal. But there was this moment that I basically had OpenClaw running on Opus 4.6. And on my other screen, I had Opus 4.6 as a guide helping. So basically, Opus 4.6 is helping Opus 4.6 to set it up. But one did a good job and the other one didn't do a good job. And then I asked, well, can you not communicate better with each other? It was kind of mind-blowing to have those intelligent systems having a chat with each other. What is the best setup? I also burned through, I think, more than $100 over a weekend in tokens. Nice. Because I was playing with this concept of heartbeats, right? So the system has a heartbeat that then basically it checks something online or it executes some tasks. And I set that interval way too short for an extreme heavy task. So it burned to 8 million tokens in one day. Yeah, so that's all learning money. But I will explore more and more and more with that. I'm pretty impressed with it, with the whole system. Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, talking about tokens and burning, I see in our community also a lot. Everybody that's using Cloud Code is pretty much going for the API pay-as-you-go route. But we also had Robert Vrees, posted a post on the cost of the models. And in that comparison, from what I understand, and now please don't take this as 100% truth, we should check it probably, but from what I understood, it's actually cheaper to use a subscription and max it out every single time than it is to just go pay as you go. Because for the pay as you go, you actually end up spending more money. So if the subscription, if Max X or Max X from Cloud Code does not meet your requirements, then obviously you want to go pay as you go. But as long as you can reasonably stay within the token limits and it resets I can see that here, it resets every 5 hours, then it's actually cheaper to stay within that. And that's what I've been doing actually. So
yeah. There's also another dimension to it, what I've been playing with. So I've connected basically all my AIs to it, and then you can make a chain to what model you would like to use for certain tasks. So I've set up a team, and my chief of staff is called Aya. She uses Opus, and the different AIs below that have different models, which also led me for the first time to install a local model. I, for the first time, have experience with QA to install that locally and see how that goes. Which kind of opened my mind as well, what the power is if you have a strong computing engine on your table here, that a lot of the workload can be done locally. You don't even need tokens or pay for tokens via the cloud for an expensive vendor. You can do quite some stuff. It just goes slower on a certain model, but I don't have that much compute. If you have a bigger compute, then you can do a lot locally as well. It's pretty interesting.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Especially if you don't need the answer right away, because the QN is going to be a lot slower, but it's going to be running completely locally. And from what we understand, the QN models are basically built on stolen Claude. So, right. So it's pretty much, well, under the hood, it's probably very much alike. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I have one agent that is called Link, which is basically my program. And I said, well, if you can build this with QN, just go ahead, do it overnight. And I'll see tomorrow morning whatever you've created. And that's also fine, right? So, but you also have a very nice announcement to make, Aragorn, because I heard you're going to do something special in China and a TV show. Tell us more about it, buddy.
Yeah, okay. So here I was thinking you were going to ask me about my week, but no, it's all good. My week's not important. No, I'm kidding, of course. Yeah, no, well, I'm going to China. Yes, 3 weeks from now, I'm flying to Shenzhen with NL Robotics. And this is all as an assignment from DPG Media, who recently bought RTL in the Netherlands. I'm going to be making a television or at least a video series that hopefully will also come on RTL. It's not 100% sure or clear now on all of which channels the video will be going out, but we are making a video series. The expectations are quite high. It's going to be at least 3 episodes. And if that is successful, it's going to be hopefully many, many more into perpetuity. And it's going to focus on the AI revolution and specifically the robotics revolution that comes after this. This is something that in the last year, of course, I've been writing articles for DBG. Most of my articles have revolved around robotics, or at least that's the majority of them. Many of them AI. Recently wrote one, of course, also on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz with the Iran war, and I've been writing about that. But my focus has been about robotics. And DBG saw, because there was a video where they went deeper into one of these topics on YouTube, that it got the most views out of all of their videos, over 200,000 views of all of their online content last year for business-wise. This is, of course, one label. I'm not saying for all of DBG, so not more than anything in the Algemeen Dagblad or the Volkskrant. For these specific channels, niche industry channels, branch channels, this was the piece of content that got the most views of anything. And so that made them decide that they want to do more with me, and specifically also around the topic of robotics. So now we're making a television program. I have my own kind of director, showrunner, Tim, who's also going to be my cameraman in China, because there are quite some limitations, of course. But yeah, it's super exciting. So yeah.
Do they have a budget for you to have 3 tickets back, including a robot that you take one with you for the show?
Yeah, that would be something, wouldn't it? But
yeah, definitely.
I'm afraid we're not quite there yet. But if all of you listen and watch enough to this video when it comes out, I'm sure we can get a better budget for the next season.
Exactly. So go fund me, go fund a robot for the Innovation Network team. Yeah, there we go.
Exactly. So let's go.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to all the content and all the news that you bring from there, of course. We even have planned, and hopefully this works out in your busy schedule there, to do a podcast recording while you're there in China. So let's see how that
So yes, I was talking about that. I would love to do that. However, we have, of course, the Chinese Great Digital Wall, and I'm not 100% convinced that we're going to be able to get around that without, well, definitely not without breaking the law. But so we'll have to see. But if I can find any way to do that, obviously I will. I already looked up, and it says that they're not actually trying to actively chase after tourists or visitors. So maybe we can do that. I've already set up a whole tail-scale mesh VPN for my Claude Code global domination network that I'm building. So yeah, maybe we can use that.
Cool, buddy. So let's shift gears towards the first topic, and also the reason that we have invited Jelmer on the podcast, because 2 weeks ago we already teased this a little bit, but now we can formally announce a new venture that we're building with the number one venture builder here, Jelmer, which is called Exponential Executives. And I personally think this is one of the most important things that we've put forward from the Innovation Network. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. We've spoken with so many executives. And every time that we have meetings over dinner or reactions on Keynote, it's really time for the follow-up question, how do you take this to the next level? And AI has been around now, well, generative AI for 1,000 days, something like that, 3 years. And most of the workshops are about prompting. Look at what we just talked about. Jelmer had this example that Claude could revamp an entire website and move away from Wix. And what I've just experienced in 1 week with OpenClaw. Things are moving now so fast that you can basically generate any application on the spot by vibe coding it. And we're moving very much into that space with this Exponential Executive proposal. That's why we think it's so important. Jelmer, can you allude a little bit about the plans that we have?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's like you already mentioned, right? AI is way more than just prompting. And it is going to impact a lot of markets, a lot of businesses. So obviously we having a lot of executives on our network, we hear the sounds of, okay, what are we going to do? We need to do something with AI. This is the phrase that everybody says, right? Something with AI. Nobody has a clue what that something is yet. So this is, I think, kind of the inspiration or the spark that got us to talk about exponential executives, right? How can we help businesses understand what's coming their way? How can we help executives become exponential and understand how do I train my employees to use AI? How am I going to rearrange my teams? How am I going to manage an organization that consists of both employees and agents, right? How am I going to stimulate the the creativity and the curiosity around this new technology so that everybody adopts it. Coding is no longer something that is exclusive to developers, right? So what happens in your organization when everybody can build an app, everybody can build a website? That's the questions that need to be answered. And this is our answer, I think, to that question.
Yeah, and you already did some tryouts. I know that for a large bank, you did a tryout, and you got some amazing results with the people. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that was a really fun experience, honestly. So you can imagine people that work inside a bank, banks are notorious for having the most strict rules around security ever, right? Compliance is usually their biggest division. So these were people that had very, very little exposure to AI. They had like a super watered down version of Copilot, right? But that was pretty much the extent of it. And they use it as a glorified Google, as I believe most people do. So we took them into this workshop. They were part of a reorganization, so they were actually leaving the bank, triggered by AI, undoubtedly. So also for them, that was a reason to start thinking about, okay, this AI is coming this way. What are we going to do about this? So under that premise, we gave them a 3-day training, which was pretty much the basics of AI, but also how can I leverage AI to revamp my own value proposition, reposition myself in the market, understand how the market will change. What does that mean for how my skills need to develop? How can I reapply myself to the market and become valuable? Anyway, these people, they came in with very little knowledge of AI and very little knowledge of technology. And one extreme example, for instance, was a guy who obviously owned a laptop and used it for work, but never used Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, right? So we showed him shortcut on day one. He asked about it 3 more times throughout the training. What was it again? Was this Control-X, Control-P? What was it again? Right? So that was already mind-blowing for him. But by day 3, and I think this indicates like the power of these tools, right? By day 3, he had built his own app. This was a guy who liked to take long walks. He built an app that could track his own walks, and then he could drop pins along his walk to either record a voice note or post a photo. So this is a guy who arguably had very, very little digital literacy. And by the end of 3 days, 3-day course, he could build an app. And that's not because the course is so brilliant. I mean, it is brilliant, but that's not the only reason. It's because the technology is so powerful.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It's every time you do this with people, it feels like you're teaching somebody a magic trick, right? Like it's like it's real magic. That's the feeling that people sometimes have. Yeah, Aragorn.
Yeah, well, it's exactly like you said. So the crazy thing is I spent, as you guys know, this weekend in Italy with one of my best friends, and he's a country manager for literally one of the world's leading global compliance and ethics companies. And I listened in on Monday morning because I was still there yesterday. I listened in because I was in the same room to his management meeting. Their CEO was going on about how they were literally all the way behind with AI. They were they felt like they're in the last 1%, and all of the managers need to step up to be a role model in AI usage. But what do they have? They went with ChatGPT Enterprise, and that's it. So my friend wanted to know how to cloud code, right, this weekend, and he only has a Microsoft Surface. That's what he has. So I just gave him the bare basics. I showed him how to get it set up, to access it from the terminal. And you got to keep in mind, this is an ARM processor Surface. So obviously we ran into lots of problems because lots of stuff wasn't actually built to run on ARM. But this is where the magic really happened, because initially he said like, oh, I just want this for fun, because I told him about Exponential executives. He said, if you want to do a masterclass for enterprise, it needs to be about enterprise AI. I said, no, that's not what it's about. These executives, enterprise AI is nice, but what they need to understand is what it is and how it changes everything. And the only way to understand what it is and how it changes everything is by getting hands-on experience. You don't know what a Formula One car really represents until you've sat in that car and you felt those G-forces push you back in that chair, right? And maybe this is not the very best example, but that's the thing.
It's a great example. It's absolutely a great example. You have to really walk the talk, not just think about AI and assume what it does. You have to feel it and build with it.
Yeah, and so, yeah, exactly. But when I gave my friend, the basics, and I got him working, and I got him to the point where he could, like you said before, Patrick, talk to Claude Opus in this case, to start fixing things. And I told him, like, you got to change your mindset. You don't Google everything, because he was literally doing that. Huh? He was trying to set it up, and then he would Google, what do I need to do? I said, no, stop doing that. Stop. Ask the AI to fix it. And if it says it can't fix it, ask it what you need to do to allow it to fix it, right? Yeah. And then within like an hour or two, he was like, oh my God, this is magic. I just told it this, and it just went off, and it did all of this, and then it was suddenly done, and then it fixed this, and then it fixed this, and then it built me this. And like literally the next morning on Sunday, he was like, oh, there's a football game today, and I read online, and I read online that there's now an AI agent that you can use to predict game outcomes, which is Microfiche. Maybe we'll talk about it later. I don't know. And he said, I want to build that so I can see if I can, if we can do something with that. And I said, well, just go ahead and try it. It's probably going to be a little bit too short. But literally this afternoon, he already built the setup to do kind of polymarket kind of game prediction stuff.
Yeah, and you said something very important, right? So we're quickly moving from using Google to get a set of answers, to prompting, to getting one single answer, to reverse engineering, you basically state what you want, for instance, a website, and then the system builds it for you, thinks with you, to what OpenClaw, my experience is, I literally am talking to the system as if it's an employee. I see it as an employee. And that is exactly the experience that we want to give the executives here. Because the moment you see that and you know what works, then you really start to get the whole picture of how it will look in your organization, how your future organization will look with a certain percentage of agents that will work, digital employees and real employees, and the work that real employees have to do in order to get all the agents productive in a way that you would like to go forward. So very important.
Hello, everybody. You probably don't know this, but the Singularity Servers podcast is not just Patrick Willer and myself. In fact, we have behind us the whole innovation network, a community of artificial intelligence enthusiasts, experts, investors, entrepreneurs, executives that we've built over the last 2 years. And we use this massive resource of brain power to find for you everything that's going on in the AI space and to distill what really matters for your business, for your personal life, and for the future of humanity on our way to the singularity. Now, if you think this is interesting, then we would highly appreciate it if you go and sign up for our newsletter on Substack. You can find us at innovationnetwork.substack.com. innovationnetwork.substack.com. That's it for now. Back to the show.
The exponential executives we just covered, right? It's focused at executives, and it's about what is coming my company's way, what is happening in my market, and how do I change my company strategy, pretty much an operating model around that. The Vibe Coding Masterclass is a similar setup. So if you're a senior manager, if you're a director, you also need to understand AI, and you're probably going to be the one who has to put it into practice. So this training is similar in setup and similar in content, but it's more focused on how do I activate my individual team, and how do I, as a director, use AI in the day-to-day to be more effective for my company.
Let's talk a little bit about the program that we have, because what I really like is, so we have a keynote in there, and of course we're going to play with vibe coding, but there's also a specific segment where you emphasize the importance of acting like an entrepreneur, whether you do that building your own company or even within a company, to have the mindset of an entrepreneur. Can you explain a little bit what that means and why that's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with any change, with any innovation, there's always a lot of uncertainty, right? There's always like, what is coming our way and what do we need to do about it? And people are always looking at what are the things that are changing, right? What are the changes that are coming our way, and how do we anticipate? How do we respond? But there are some things that don't change, that stay the same. The things that stay the same are there are always problems to be solved, right? There are always solutions to those problems to be found, and there's always value to be created by creating solutions to those problems. And this is something that I think is that you touch upon that's very important, that is kind of the red thread that runs through all of our trainings, is that entrepreneurial mindset of being able to understand the challenges that arise as a consequence of in this case AI, and having a mindset of problem solving and creating value, rather than thinking in terms of roles, in terms of skills, in terms of job descriptions, right? And thinking more of how can I contribute value to the company or to the market or to my client or whatever your position may be, which is way more powerful. And in a faster changing market, I think you guys have discussed this on a podcast 1,000 times already, but the market changes are speeding up, right? So your company strategy has to be way more agile, way more adaptive. And this translates to your employees as well. Your employees will have to make more changes more rapidly, and they have to be equipped to do so. And thinking in this fixed way of roles and skills and job descriptions is not going to get you there. Yeah.
So Jelmer,
Yeah.
who's going to be the employees of the future?
That depends on the timeline, if you ask me.
Because you talk about employees, and I think that one of the maybe underappreciated things of what we're trying to do with this program is prepare managers for a new reality. I mean, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, there's definitely going to be a difference like the timeline, but who are going to be the employees?
At least in the near future, it's going to be at least a hybrid team setup, right? Your team is no longer going to consist of just people. It's going to consist of people and agents. And your people will also be augmented by AI, right? There will be hybrids almost between the meat and the plastics, the silicon, so to speak. That in itself is already a huge change in terms of how do you manage and achieve goals with those teams. But also for the individuals in those teams, those quote unquote employees, that's a huge change. To maybe I have a Teams call with just agents, right? There's nobody to drink coffee with. That's something to deal with. That's something to adapt to.
And not only within your own company. Most companies will make this pivot. So are you going to deal with agents as customers? And are the customers real people dealing with your agents? There's all new things to consider how you deal with that. Yeah,
absolutely.
So how can people sign up? People have listened to this story and they're all interested, and I'm looking forward to receive a lot of people signing up. So where do they go, Jelmer?
The easiest is go to exponential-executives.com. If you want to find more information on the executive training, or you want to apply. And for the management layer, there's www.vibecodingmasterclass.nl. That's the Dutch suffix.
I love it how you're adding the www, because we know that it's going to be the boomers that this masterclass is for. So, we still need to add that www.
Exactly.
But we love you, boomers. We love you. You're more than welcome. Yeah, so vibecodemasterclass.nl. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, people can also find us on LinkedIn. Just reach out directly. But the easiest is through the website, probably.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, or if you're watching this on YouTube, then make sure that it's in the screen. If you're listening to this on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or any of the other platforms where a podcast goes, I'll make sure that's in the description there. By the way, I'll also put our Substack in there. So if you haven't already, go there and follow that as well. Thank you. That was our commercial break.
Nice.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic. And I just wanted to have a conversation about this thing that is happening in my mind and see how you feel about it. I wrote a blog about it. It's called the Exponential to-do list. So this promise of AI is that it takes away all admin and all these kind of works, and I have more time to walk the dog, to be with the kids and all these kind of things. And I like to think I'm a good dad. I have plenty of time with the family. But honestly, all this ability that AI gives me kind of spawns into like a hydra. I finish one idea and then I get 2 new ideas, and I solve those and I've got 4 new ideas. It literally is an exponential to-do list because I can do anything. I can create any app. There's so many things to do, and it even affects my thinking in my sleep. I know that I dream of things that I can do and I wake up with things that I can do. Let me pause because before I go on a rant, do you have the same thing? And how do you feel about that?
Rants are great. I'm a big fan of rants. But,
I know you are.
Jelmer. So, but and my to-do list is definitely starting to look like one of my rants. Endless.
I mean, I definitely recognize this. I think Nassim Taleb would call it anti-fragile, right? The more you try to resist it, the more comes out of it. But I have the same thing. Just as soon as you pick up Claude and you start building stuff, you start getting more ideas than you can build, and that's definitely a side effect. I see online they even call it Claude psychosis to an extent. If you get really deep into it, right? People are going really crazy with this stuff.
See the guy that has Claude send him newspapers. So there's this guy that has Claude to generate a newspaper every day of everything that they've been doing together. It's kind of hilarious. Yeah.
What's happening now in a very short time frame is that for millions of years we have our brainstem determining how we react to certain responses, like a lion coming out of the woods, stuff like that. Then we evolved into more mammal and emotional kind of things. And then we evolved into rationality, which is kind of reflecting how our brain is built up, right? From a brainstem to lobes around it to a prefrontal cortex. Yep. This is million years of evolution. And now all of a sudden, we got this AI layer, this artificial layer that connects us to our second brains. And we're not even talking about a second brain anymore. We're talking about multiple brains. We're thinking towards a screen, towards a system with each other. And that just rapidly changes the way that we think and come up with ideas. This is the big challenge, right? How do we deal with that?
In my keynote in the past, I actually had a slide where I speaking of augmented intelligence. So we went from basically the reptilian brain to the mammalian brain and then to the prefrontal cortex. And now we are building another layer on top, which is going to be augmented reality. But it's interesting because since then, I read a lot of books, and one of the books that I read was from David Chalmers, and he introduced to me the idea of the extended mind. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because what you see right now is this massive conversation about, is AI making us dumber? We're seeing cognitive decline. People are not going to do stuff anymore. And of course, we've seen this conversation before when the calculator was first put to market.
It's one of the biggest fears from people. Absolutely.
Yeah. Teachers took to the streets to say, look, we're going to get dumber. But historically speaking, right, I'm the future historian. Historically speaking, what we see is that whenever we developed new brain regions, other brain regions would see their functionality and their usage changed. And usually they would become more specialized on certain things and they would lose other abilities, you know. And it's not just the brain, it's the body as well. We still have our little tailbone because once upon a time we used to have a tail, right? Just like Super Saiyans, or should I say monkeys? but we don't anymore. And so I think that maybe this fear that we have of losing something is over-exaggerated right now. And maybe we should focus more on that idea of the extended mind, where any tool that we use to extend our cognitive capabilities, any kind of output it generates is reintegrated into our brain, which is literally what we do when we start using AI to do stuff and then bring it back to further develop it. If done right, of course. If you completely offload everything, then yes, you're going to get very stupid and you're going to turn back into an amoeba. But as long as we reintegrate it in some way, then it's basically just the next step of evolution, I would say.
Yeah, I agree, but it does make you dependent on something else. The other cognitive evolution is all within yourself. It's really, that makes you human, right? This is the first time that you're really depending on connecting with something outside of your brain. And I think that's where most of the fear comes from. We'll talk about this a little bit later as well, because we have an interesting report from NVIDIA, from Anthropic, which kind of talks about this topic as well. So we'll get back to that a little bit later, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I would love to hear Jelmer's idea, because Jelmer did, of course, work at McKinsey, one of the most lauded consultancy and analytics agencies in the world. I mean, if anybody would have an understanding of cognitive offloading, then it would be an organization like this, right? Because you have so many specialists and you need to have different people working on different parts, but ultimately one person is probably responsible for a client. I don't know. I've never worked at a company like that, but I would love to get your insights on this.
I think there's definitely, I think the analogy is actually very strong that you're making right now that I didn't really think of myself. But essentially, the way it sometimes felt to me, and this is not completely fair, right? But the way it sometimes felt to me is like CEOs or executives are kind of offloading their job to us as a consulting firm when I was there, right? And that's to define strategy, to figure out what's the best next move that we need to make with our company. And then obviously you don't have capacity in-house. You have other things on your mind. You can't do everything by yourself. and then you go to a firm that is known for delivering the right results, that has a great reputation. The famous phrase, nobody got fired over hiring McKinsey, right? So, but essentially it's a similar thing, right? You're kind of offloading this difficult task to a team of very intelligent people. I mean, I was by far the least intelligent there. I'm not the smartest man alive. I know that from experience. And they are going to do a really good job at it. And they're going to come back with hopefully something that will give you insight into your next step. Yeah.
In a way, that is what CEOs were already doing with companies like McKinsey, offloading cognitive load onto a set of agents. I meant analysts. That's literally now going to be everybody's job in the new world.
But I think Patrick's point also holds, right? So if you keep externalizing all of these types of capabilities, that also means you weaken your own core capabilities, right? So if your job is strategy, but all you do is kind of offload entirely your strategy, which is not what happens in practice, but let's imagine, then you completely erode your own capability of doing strategy, right? And you become dependent on external.
And that's also a century-old thing, right? So I always like these memes that come out if rate limits are hit and people don't know what to do because Claude is not available anymore. There's big panic because they don't know how to execute work. But the same if the power goes down, right? If you have an evening no power, people wouldn't know what to do, or you have no reach with your cell phone. How can I make it through the evening? Same kind of thing.
Just realized that the Dutch concept of dropping is going to be more important than ever before. Like, I don't know if you ever watched online. You should see American parents react to videos or things about Dutch dropping. So for those of you that don't know, probably most of you do, but in the Netherlands, we have this thing, and every Dutch kid has done it, is where you're taken one day, you put somewhere in the forest at night, and you have to make your way home. And it sounds scarier than it is, because in the Netherlands, well, we do have wolves now again. I just realized that we didn't have wolves when I was young, but
we don't do the dropping with the wolves now.
Generally, it's not really that dangerous. It's just, kind of, out there, and you have to just figure it out. The funny thing is, in America, they actually have camps for kids that do the same thing, right? Where they go away for like a week or a weekend to learn survival skills and stuff like that, which is probably way more intense. But the thing is, there's a reason we do that, right? It's great to be able to offload everything, but it's still good to have a basic understanding of basic things. And I find that same kind of mental mindset in my own work. I love writing, but I've been offloading a lot of it increasingly to Claude, because I've built this massive framework with a voice profile and rules for writing. But I still find that the best articles that come out of my pen, so to speak, are the ones where I have the AI write it, I go and read it, I'm completely unhappy with the whole parts of it that I then completely rewrite. But at the same time, whatever it wrote is triggering in me new insights and pattern recognition that then create an even better article, right? So it's a collaboration, and I'm still practicing my own skills.
Nice way of putting that. Anything more to say about to-do list and exponential thinking?
Yeah, my to-do list is massive. I don't know how other people do this.
To the side list now on top of my to-do list. That's just continuously thinking about where do I put the priority, because the to-do list is exploding. So what's now important for today, and try to approach it from that angle.
Yeah, so I made two things, and I have to admit one of them I don't use. When I started working with Claude Code, I created 2 documents in my Obsidian Vault. And my Obsidian Vault is basically my knowledge database where everything goes. I made Cortex and Retina. And Cortex is just for text dumping. Any idea in my head that I can create, that I can write about, just a little note, a scratch pad, whatever, I dump it in Cortex. And then Retina was for images. I'm still working on integrating that properly. But any idea I get during the day, no matter how silly or small, if I think I could do something with this, it goes in Cortex. And then automatically, several times a day, Claude Code will process the Cortex document. It will categorize whatever it is, put it in the right to-do list for me, whether it's important or a priority or not. I, of course, mark all of those things, whether it's an article draft or a concept or an idea. And then ultimately, it ends up on the to-do list. And I'll see if it happens or not. That will all depend on importance and priority.
Yeah.
or urgency.
Smart way of approaching it. Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the next topic then. We had another 2.5 hour keynote from rockstar Jensen Huang. He's appearing on a lot of big podcasts. I thought I saw him on the All In podcast as well, explaining where the company is going. It's always quite impressive. Do you know, Aragorn, that he's not practicing that? He's just going on stage and is just delivering a keynote like that from the top of his mind. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, no. Actually, I did indeed know that, and this might sound crazy, but I'm not surprised. You can tell because that's why his keynotes are so good. So when I've been doing public speaking for a long, long time, but when I worked at LinkedIn specifically, I was asked to join a program called Own the Room, and I was trained by top trainers, and then ultimately I became one of them myself. I joined Own the Room as a trainer for a year, and the thing that really stuck with me. I learned a lot, don't get me wrong. I learned an incredible amount of public speaking, specifically by being a coach and following their program. But their program is so American in every sense. It is 100% scripted. I cannot tell you how many times I was told by the senior coach, Aragorn, you're going off script too often. You need to follow the script. You need to say this in that moment, and you need to say that in that moment. And that's what we teach these people, to follow the script and to prepare everything. And then, but the thing is, if you do that, you can learn from that. But if you keep doing that as a public speaker, you beat all life out of your performance. It's horrible. It's not fun to watch anymore.
And it is a different skill to memorize things than to understand things. And that's what you see with Jensen. He just deeply, deeply understands his entire industry, where he's taking this company, how it is built up. You can ask him any question within that field, and he just extrapolates a 1, 2, 3 step and why it's important. It's a blessing to hear that person speak. He also recorded a podcast with Friedman, by the way. I still have to listen to it, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I haven't watched the whole keynote yet, and I do that always. There's so many nuggets in there. Of course, you have to keep in mind.
I know, it's on my to-do list.
Yeah, it's on the to-do list. It is, of course, also marketing. Let's not forget, NVIDIA is not there to not sell their own product. And so generally speaking, I find that every year there's some things in there that are slightly kind of presented in a way that make them seem more impressive than they really are. But what really struck me, completely blindsided me this year in a way, was when, and this is not specifically AI, but he introduced something called DLSS 5. Which is for gaming specifically. And so what it is, it's now, I know that Jelmer is anxiously awaiting the release of a Grand Theft Auto 6, which I think will never be released because they're just trying to catch up with technology, and they're never actually going to manage. But the thing is that for 2 years almost, people have been posting videos of old Grand Theft Auto games with an AI reskin, and they've been going online, oh look, this would be so amazing if we get this. So you'd think that when that actual technology is released, everybody would be like, wow, this is amazing. And this is literally what Jensen Huang did. He released DLSS 5, which basically turns a super ugly ass game into a near photorealistic experience. It is absolutely mind-blowing. But do you think the gamers like it? Literally, all of Reddit exploded with a level of hatred that is just unbelievable. The only subreddit you can go is /accelerate, where people are like, well, this is great. And everywhere else...
Can I ask you a question about it? Are only haters saying something like that? Because I love it, and most of the people that I talk to do love it. Are those people just quiet, or are they really in a minority? Because why wouldn't you not love a high-definition game? I'm not getting this.
Well, you're making
the hate. I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, I think you're making an incredible point. I think it's very possible that there are loads of people out there that do appreciate it, but they are just, not so vocal about it, because haters are always more vocal than lovers. This is an absolute fact, and I totally hope that you are. But unfortunately, what we've seen so many times, especially in the gaming industry, is that if the haters are vocal enough, it results in action. Arc Raiders is a game that very bravely introduced AI-generated voices, had contracts with their voice actors so they didn't need to come into the studio and they would still get properly paid. And they basically didn't get a prize awarded for audio because they had AI introduced because all the journalists were hating on it. And they're literally backtracking now, and they're forcing their voice actors to come back into the studio to record things live because of the pressure from the gaming community. It's just incredibly sad because in my personal opinion, this is like literally Luddites. Imagine if the Luddites had actually succeeded in getting rid of the Steam introduction of Steam engines for creating textiles. Like, we would still be walking around in I don't know, Adam and Eve clothing or something, or some horrible Middle Ages stuff, right? You cannot give in to these Luddite anti-technology people. They don't understand what they want. They don't understand what's good for them.
We don't have to give in, right? There will be companies that do use the technology, and we will see how the market respond to them. If they have a more beautiful game than, for instance, the Grand Theft Auto. I don't know. Let's see how that happens. Yeah. What's your takeaway, Jelmer, from the keynote, if you had time to look at it or dive into it?
So I didn't have time to look into the keynote. I did, of course, follow everything with the AI gaming models and reskins. I'm just really baffled by the response, to be honest. Same as Aragorn. I cannot explain it either. I mean, I'm a gamer myself, right? Aragorn introduced. Have been so, I think, since I was 5 years old, and it used to be the nerds that were into gaming, right? So you would assume that they would also be into the advancement of technology. We would read science fiction novels, watch those types of movies. Everybody has The Matrix in their top 3. So why this is not embraced, I have no clue. I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to play a game that runs this engine. Yeah.
There was also another remarkable point. He kind of had a slide in there where he told that how important OpenClaw was, and he never saw anything like it. It's the most exciting piece of technology I've seen since the web browser in '92. And like you said, Aragorn, there's a lot of marketing in here because this is one of the smart things to do, right? How many tokens do we already burn with Vifren? If you want to 10x that or 100x that, then you put everything on OpenClaw or NemoClaw type of agents that continuously talk and burn tokens the entire day through. That will drive more sales for this company. That's how you become $1 trillion $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
And the other end, it's also true. That's just what's going to happen, and that's what we need, right? Every company needs an OpenClaw strategy, is what he said, and I kind of agree with him, because that's a running engine below the agents that really autonomously can perform work. So yeah.
Well, if there's anything that OpenClaw has highlighted, of course, it's that what everybody really, really, really wants is their own Jarvis, Iron Man, artificial intelligence that can actually get stuff done for them, that is integrated into your life in such a way that it can take autonomous action and get stuff done when you ask for it. And the AI companies have kind of been steering away from this, and probably, understandable reasons, because the potential for things to really go really wrong is massive, and you don't want to be implicated. I mean, just look at what happened with the Iran war and the fight between Anthropic and the Pentagon, and then OpenAI stepping in and saying, well, which is kind of weird, but they stepped in and they took the contract, and they literally lost 1.5 million users the next day because that in the eyes of the public, that is bad. Now imagine if something with an agent like OpenClaw goes wrong, and somehow public opinion is like, oh, this is the fault of ChatGPT or OpenAI or Claude or Google. So obviously they're afraid of that and afraid of the potential consequences if it goes south. But when OpenClaw made its debut and the way it went viral, it has made it, undeniable that this is what people want. This is where we're headed. And if they're not going to build it, other people are going to build it, and then it's basically going to be open source. So you already see it. What has Anthropic done over the last 2-3 weeks? It has introduced feature after feature after feature: dispatch, remote control, and now channels. Basically, it's just adding all the features that basically OpenClaw added to make it easier to have an autonomous agent working for you, even when you're not actually there. So now it's catch up. It's catch up.
I love it. All the disruptors can be disrupted themselves as well. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this is what I talked about this weekend as well with my friend. I said, what executives need to understand, and that's another thing of our masterclass as well, and I'm not trying to sell it, but I'm trying to say, as an executive, they need to start to realize that their competition is not just the other big boys anymore. You're not just competing with the corporate, in the next country with 100,000 employees or 50,000 employees or whatever your size is. And you're now competing with every crazy person in a basement that says, I want to step into this industry, because he can just spin up. He doesn't have your limitations and restrictions. He can spin up 100 agents or 1,000 agents, and he can probably come up with something really, really, really powerful in no time whatsoever that can completely disrupt your industry if you're not careful.
Yeah, totally agree. Anything more to add to that one? Or then I would like to pivot to something that caught my eye as well, and I think that's going to interest you as well, specifically Aragorn. All right, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was the All In podcast. And there the guest was Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber. And it was an amazing story because he's building a new company. The company is called Atoms. But what's interesting is he's been working for 8 years to build this company in secrecy. So he was explaining that more than 1,000 people are working for this company. The company is doing acquisitions, but no single employee was allowed to put anything about what they do on a public website or on LinkedIn or anything like that. They are now hitting market, and they're doing something interesting because everybody's talking, of course, about physical AI, and that's also where your TV show is going. But mostly if we talk about that, we quite often refer to the humanoid robots, right? We talk a lot about those. He's kind of going in completely the other direction and has a statement saying, well, specialized robots will be humanoids in certain markets, which is kind of interesting. He now doubles down on a mining industry. You want to completely automate the whole mining process. And it really was eye-opening for me how far that goes, right? If you are, for instance, you completely automate and can go deeper into the ground with specialized robots, it's kind of amazing what you can discover and do for the entire industry of a company or a country or the entire world. So, so what do you think of that, Ara?
The first thing I had to think of when you mentioned this was literally what Elon Musk said in, I think it was the moonshots where the boys visited the Tesla Gigafactory. He said, AI will do everything, but ultimately the only thing that's left is controlling atoms or moving atoms, I think he said, or moving atoms. And that's really what it's all about. So I think this is massive. Obviously, I'm super happy that you told me this, because now we're going to have to go and visit or talk to him or get this somehow in the show, because this is exactly what the television program is all about as well. We have massive discussions in our community as well. Right? There's people that say, well, humanoid robotics are not going to move so quickly because there's all these, technical challenges, etc., the skeptics. Then there's people that say, well, no, humanoid robots are not going to be massive. It's all going to be specialized robots. But I think that, Anisha, I think that he is on the right track, because I think that specialized robots have a very important role to play. But it's only going to be for specific tasks. The humanoid robot, the whole power of the humanoid is that it's a generalist robot. Right, so it can fit into any slot. But obviously some tasks we humans are also not good at, and that's where you probably need robots.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point, right? The entire argument for humanoid robots is that our environment is built for humans, right? So it needs to adapt to the environment first before we can adapt the environment itself. But there are environments that are not adapted to humans at all. And mining, I think it's a brilliant move. I think mining is a great example. It's extremely dangerous for people to work in mining. It's unhealthy, right? You're working under the ground. You're working at weird spaces, odd angles. It's definitely not built for the human body. So building robots for an application like that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes me think of what Becky McCormick always mentions in his podcast, Not Boring Podcast, is to advance technology, we need three things. The first thing we need is the resources, the natural resources, and that's where mining comes into play. And then we need power, energy, right, to power the machines and to power the silicon. And then lastly, we need compute, right? We need thinking. We need thinking and outsource it to computers. And this is one of the three pillars, right? One of the base pillars of whatever you're building, you're going to end up with raw materials first. So for him to tackle that, I think it's a brilliant idea at face value.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and it also, I just realized, it's funny because a lot of the conversations, and Patrick also sees this online, like all of the AI robotic skeptics will also say things like, yes, but we need more raw materials, and it's all being mined by these poor people in Africa. And that's why we need to stop it. We need to stop all progress in the world because these poor people in Africa. And I'm like, no. We need to put the pedal to the metal so that we can get these robots to do it for these people in Africa, and they can have a wonderful life with a nice house built by these robots, and they can spend good time with their kids because they don't need to worry about money anymore. That's what we need, right? And then they call me accelerationist or whatever, and like
which you are, so that doesn't really matter, right? So that's the right label. So a very interesting company to keep on following. Another thing that caught my eye, there was a report. Actually, there was an overview created by, I think it was Kapati, who made an overview of jobs that are under risk. And a guy called Daniel Shihaya made a Dutch version of that. Maybe we can dive a little bit into that and make some conclusions.
So maybe it's good just quickly to say who Andrej Karpathy is, because I'm sure that most of our listeners do not know. So this is one of the most prominent forefront AI experts right now. He's basically been part of everything, everywhere, and he's been very vocal about his ideas. And he's the one that introduced vibe coding to the world.
He's the one that coined the term, right? Indeed.
Exactly. And now this is literally a little side project that he did. That's a crazy thing. That's because he works with 100 agents every day. So he did this side project to kind of build an app that can show AI exposure of jobs. And Daniel made it for the Dutch market. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So basically it's an interactive map where you can see he has 113 Dutch occupations mapped on there. In the Netherlands, we have about 8 million people working with 100 billion annual wages. And basically what you see here, the larger the box, the bigger that specific group is. And if it's red, then your kind of AI could do most of the tasks that role has.
You're cooked. If it's red, you're cooked.
If you're red, you're cooked. Like software and application developments, marketing and PR and sales, I see here, administrative staff, executive secretaries are all here in the red.
So if you think about your future career, this is something you could consider looking at.
Super interesting chart, huh? What immediately? So you guys are focused on the red, but I'm focused on the green. What immediately stands out? The biggest green square on this is, first of all, care workers, which I think there are a lot of trends behind that as well. That's not just AI creating that opportunity or leaving that opportunity, but then also cleanings, waiters, kitchen helpers. Super interesting.
Yep. Construction workers, carpenters, machine mechanics. Yeah, basically everything that requires a physical interaction with the physical part of the world.
Which is interesting if you tie it to the discussion that we just had, right? For the past 3 years, we focused on the digital part of AI and the impact on all these jobs, and those are now turning up red. Let's talk in 3 years further down the line and see these kind of things like chauffeurs, cleaners that could be done by different types of robots, and that will impact as well, just a little bit further down the line.
You're actually making a really good point, because that's the only thing about this dashboard that I'm kind of struggling with, is that it shows exposure, but it doesn't actually give any indication on timelines. I mean, what is the exposure of administrative staff, which is 9 out of 10, meaning that basically that entire job is already replaceable by AI, because that's what it means.
Now, today.
Yeah, it could be replaced, right? It could be, because this board doesn't say anything about what's actually happening in the world. For example, capital inertia, or the fact that humans simply can move that fast. CEOs will not change this quickly. There's resistance. All of these things are not really tied into this. This is simply exposure. Like, can a company make a decision to replace all of the people that have these jobs today with AI? And then for administrative staff, it's 9 out of 10. So they're literally, if they kept 10% of their staff on that, they could do the only tasks that are still required for a human to do, and everybody else they could technically get rid of. But it doesn't say what's it going to be like in 2 years or in 5 years or in 10 years. And I think that's really relevant, because even all of these green fields, they're going to be safe in the relative short term. Well, let's say maybe 5 years. But ultimately, if it was down 10 years down the line, which I think if you're thinking about job markets and economies and the future of your kids is a very relevant timeline.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a chart that you should look at with your kids if you want to determine which direction they should apply for a study, right?
No. But that's so important what you just mentioned, because imagine looking at this and saying, oh, cleaners are doing pretty well. They're going to be making more money. There's going to be job availability. I'm going to be a cleaner. That's going to be great for the next 5 years. And then it's going to collapse because there's going to be robots coming out that are going to be doing that. Right? So then you would have been better off if you had done, maybe some more studying, work with AI, have a polymath kind of education, get a lot of generalist experience or whatever, so that you can easily swap into a different industry or whatever, right? It's not, I would really want to stress that. This is not something you should look at and make a decision on your career, your future like that, or for your kids anyway.
Yeah. It's an important point, and I think it's something that a lot of parents especially are struggling with, right? Making decisions on their kids' future and what should they study. So in the trainings that we did do so far, this was by far one of the most asked questions. Like, what do I tell my kids right now? At this stage, it's difficult to say, depending on their age. But I think a core tenet will continue to be having this adaptive mindset and trying to be entrepreneurial about it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has a 100% answer. But if anything, I think we should move away from specialism and we should become generalists again. And that way you can leverage, because we were working with AI and AI gives you all the specialist capabilities, right? So if you are a generalist and you're capable of thinking outside of the boxes, applying things that you see in one industry or one field into another, that's going to give you a major advantage.
Couldn't agree more. And that ties into the next topic, because Anthropic, once again, did a nice survey or study. This time they invited more than 80,000 people to do interviews in 160 countries, 70 languages. And they conducted that in December 2025. And they basically asked, what do they want from AI? So what are really the things that people are asking? And the outcome of it is that people ask for more competence, more emotional support, saving time, a lot of questions about financial stability, and more control over complicated lives. And if you scroll down a little bit in the page that you have there, the first graph is what people hope for. And you see the number one thing there, professional excellence. Personal transformation on the second one, and life management on the third. So that is the top three of what people in one way or another asking questions about or want to achieve while they're using AI.
So you've obviously, Patrick, you've already read this or looked at it carefully, because I've not. Did they say anything about their sample group? Is this people that are on the forefront of using AI? Are these early adopters, or is this just people in general?
I didn't touch on that, so I don't know.
It says here, healthcare worker, United States of America. I receive 100 to 150 text messages per day. So that would imply to me that it's somebody that's not per se an early adapter. The reason I ask is because I think that kind of, the more, I think your exposure, and then I'm not talking about exposure from the last topic, but how much interaction you've had with AI and how far along the kind of, experience curve you are, because you have the people that are, using ChatGPT as a glorified Google. And then there's people like us that use Claude Code. And then there's people like Andrej Karpathy, who probably have, 1,000 agents working at 100 different projects every single day. And he's orchestrating all of that. But depending on your exposure, I think that your answer will be different. What do you guys think?
Couldn't agree more with that statement. We can assume that it's all AI uses, so that's already a small sliver from the world population. Otherwise, you cannot ask the questions. I'm trying to find if I see it on the report, but not yet. What's your take, Jelmer?
Yeah, I'm also thinking, what do people want? Productivity, professional excellence. Be careful what you wish for, right? Because it's going to become a hell of a lot more productive than you are, and in no time it will replace you if you're not careful.
Yeah, this is the framing thing that's constantly going on. If you tell people it's going to replace them, they hate it. But if you tell them they're going to be more productive, they love it. And I think that that's also a pivot we're seeing now in how AI companies are marketing their product.
Could not agree more. There's a big asymmetry in this whole report. So people want to delegate, but still want independence. They want AI to help them think, but don't want to lose the cognitive load. Actually, there's something about the cognitive load. If you scroll a little bit down, then you see a blue part and you see what people worry about. Number 1, unreliability. Number 2, jobs and economy. And if you scroll a little bit further down, there's a nice takeout. So there you see there a little bit further. So you see a graph. Yeah, that's the one. You see learning. 33% mention this as a benefit. And in the same time, 70% mention the cognitive entropy that we talked about, that you kind of think on your own at the beginning of the conversation. So there you have this balancing act, right? So this is paradoxical and interesting at the same time.
That's super interesting indeed. And I also wonder, like, if they are on the same planes of the brain, if that makes sense. Like maybe short-term memory, you experience cognitive atrophy, but long-term skill building, maybe you experience benefits, right? So is there a trade-off there that is being made by using AI, or at least that people think they're experiencing?
Maybe this will affect people depending on their interest in learning in and of itself. See, I've always felt, and it's funny, my mother's 81 and she always says, I've always felt like my brain is a sponge. I need to absorb everything, which is now a problem because she keeps watching the 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock and midnight news. And it's, it's not really that reliable anymore. So I've complicated conversations with her. But my mom has this obsession with taking in new information, right? And I have the same thing. And I think that in this world, that is a massive, massive advantage. It's a superpower almost. And yesterday evening, I walked on the airport in Italy, and there was this American. Yeah, it's a little bit of a cliche, but these American school kids on a Europe trip. One of these boys, 14, 15-year-old, walking next to me, and maybe it's because he was a teenager, but he said, "Oh, look, it's an international bookstore. That would be great if I was interested in literature, which I'm not." And I couldn't help but think, yeah, well, that explains a lot. And I know it's not nice. But I honestly, I wonder, is this where the separating lines are now going to be? Are we going to see that people that are actually interested and eager to absorb information, to learn, to still learn things for themselves, to expand their own, large language model up here, are they going to have a massive advantage over the people that are basically just lazy?
That could very well be. Yeah.
What do you think is the driving force behind that, Aragorn? So when you talk about your mother treating her brain as a sponge and wanting to absorb new information constantly, and you yourself as well, right? You're constantly exploring new topics. I think everybody in this call is, to be honest. But what do you think the driving force is behind this willingness to learn? Is it curiosity, or is it like a fear of missing out? Is it something entirely different? And if we can pinpoint that, then I'm pretty sure it's not like a fixed capability that you have. I think it's something that anybody can develop, including the people you just mentioned that might be lazy now. Because if that's true, like if this is going to be important towards the future, we need to stimulate it in as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's a great question. So interestingly enough, this week I listened to Moonshots from Peter Diamandis a lot. And there was this episode, and I think it's already older, I'm not sure, it's about alpha schools in the United States. And the whole concept of alpha schools is that kids can learn 10 times faster, but you have to accept that the traditional model of a teacher in front of a class is dead. They don't do that. They don't do that at all. But their results are really, and if you're interested in this, if you have kids, you should really, really pay attention, because their results are actually extraordinary. These kids do in a fraction of the time of what normal kids do. They do all the work and they all score in the top, right? And these are not per se exceptional kids. They don't want to take holidays because they love going to school. And that's because their curriculum is so completely different. So coming back to what you said, what is it? Well, I think there's two things at play. Yes, I do think that to some extent we have genetic and epigenetic kind of influences there, right? My mom is as well, definitely neurodivergent. So there's in school when I was young, the teacher said Aragorn cannot stay focused, he cannot pay attention. But it wasn't that I couldn't stay focused. It was that the way things were presented to me were just incredibly boring, right? So I couldn't stay focused. But if I find a topic that I love, and you guys know this, I will go above and beyond. I will go absolutely ham on this shit, right? I will work through volumes of information in no time to kind of know everything about it and make it my own. And so there's the jack of all trades, master of none, but better than master of one thing comes in, right? This generalization, but you need to have that thing. For me, it's partially, natural. I'm built like that. But I think my mother also really, 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 because she always wanted this, she stimulated this in me. From a young age, I've been exposed to books. I've been exposed to ideas. I've been exposed to cultural things. I had African masks in my house because my parents lived in Africa. All of these things influence you as a child. And so I think the answer to your question is we need to change the educational system. And it needs to happen today. We need to completely start treating our kids differently in terms of how we educate them, because I think that is exactly what you said, Jelmer. Kids can learn to love, to learn, and that could change everything.
I'd like to offer something else as well, because you're asking about the drivers, Jelmer, and you offered one already, curiosity. I think that's a very big part. And of course, you can trigger that by ways of presenting certain topics to people to make them curious, but it's also very much a personal trait. One person is more curious than another person, I think. Curiosity is for me a big driver. I'm always just curious, and I think for humans in general has always been a driver to do that. But also pure Darwinism and survival skills, because having more knowledge is more power and get you further ahead. And I think very deep ingrained in our system, that is also a trigger to learn. And that goes in combination with curiosity. These two fuel each other to lean towards the learning part and not care so much about the cognitive atrophy. I don't give a shit about the fact that I don't write D's and T's correct anymore because I have a spell check. And I know that if their spell check is taken away, everybody would feel, oh, Patrick doesn't understand grammar. But I trust it's going to be there, right? So I just extend my thinking, my curiosity to other fields because I have that technology.
Makes sense. Yep. What do you think is the limit of that? So yes, we lean on technology now. We're comfortable doing it. But what if your brain chip fails the same way electricity sometimes fails, and now you're unable to speak? Like, is that a risk that you're willing to take? Are you comfortable with that risk? And maybe we're not right now, but in 10 years we'll be, the first in line to get that chip. So what are your thoughts there?
I'm not so worried about it breaking down. I'm personally more worried about the fact that you are no longer in control of that tech, for instance. Imagine, so if you have a brain chip, like the Neuralink, right? If you have Neuralink and it goes down, your patient are quadriplegic again. So back to base, if that makes sense. What's more scary for me if you have a chip and somebody controls that chip and feeds you things that are not your own against your will or something like that. That's more the area of fear that I have with those type of advancements.
But don't you think that's kind of, in all honesty, how is that different than today? I could have an aneurysm any moment now. If I had too much alcohol, if I don't eat properly, my brain functions less well. If I don't get enough sleep, I can't think. I won't perform so well, which we've had even happen on the recordings of this show. At the same time, if I watch social media today, and I get into a rabbit hole, I'm already being fed literally like a completely different version of our world, which is untrue, but which will completely alter my mental state, how I look at the world, how I behave. And it can even lead to me grabbing an assault rifle, driving to some pizza place somewhere and then shooting inside because I think that people there are eating children in the back. Yes, this sounds crazy. Yes, this happened. This was Pizzagate in the United States, people. So all of these fears that we have, we're now projecting on new technology, but all of them already exist. All of them already exist. We just use telling ourselves that it's scary because it's going to be some chip, but that's what I feel anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent. But if For instance, if you have a bionic eye or something like that, you still decide yourself what you see. At least you have the freedom to do something like that. You have the freedom to think it through. But if somebody projects something on your eye and you have to mandatory look at that because that is completely controlled, that is kind of taking it away. That you have the freedom to not drink that alcohol. You have the freedom to choose that food. But if you get it stuffed, the alcohol, that's something different, right?
I had a different thought, and I think they can coexist, right? So you can have brain chips that are being controlled externally or centrally, and what I'm about to propose. But based on the discussion we had earlier, right, and everybody building their own agents, setting up their own second brains, automating their entire lives, essentially, aren't we individually, decentrally building our own little matrices? And aren't we building our own little versions of the matrix that's not centrally controlled and run by agents as a virus and robots that want to harvest us, but it's one of our own creation that is personalized and built by ourselves, our own little digital prison, so to speak.
I love that. So this is really a nice close for this podcast. Wow, what a statement, and definitely something that you should come back for and talk more about. But what is your take on that, Mr. Matrix? Aragorn?
Well, I think that, of course, it's very possible. And I think that this is generally a fear that has arisen since the rise of social media. Are we building our own echo chambers? And I guess the answer is yes. I mean, go and listen to a podcast like The Coming Storm, which I got, by the way, recommended from Remco Michiels, another one of our community members. And I absolutely love that. It was brilliantly eye-opening. It's about how the rise of QAnon. I've known 4chan for a long time, but I never knew that 4chan was literally like the cesspit of the internet where every crazy conspiracy theory finds its origin story. And then there's 8chan, which is even worse. It's crazy stuff. So all of this is already happening, and we don't have chips. We don't have cybernetics. And then really, if you think about it, and we go back to the 18 or 1600s, I think, the Inquisition and the witch hunt around Europe, it also happened. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have chips, and people still got it. The Puritans, got it in their minds that witches were everywhere and they had to be found and executed and burned. And it's not technology. It's people. It's people, right? What is our greatest strength? Our imagination, and our capacity through imagination to plan and to develop and to invent is also our greatest Achilles heel, because we get carried away in this imagination to places that take us to a very dark side of ourselves.
So actually, a way of connecting with different brains, even artificial, like a hive mind, puts us more into reality because we can keep each other in check rather than have this own personal prison which lives in our own mind. That's basically what we conclude to now, right, or not?
We are the Borg. Your cultural and intellectual uniqueness will be incorporated. You will be assimilated and added to our own.
By the way, I wasn't posing my decentralized matrix theory necessarily as a negative thing, right? Everybody builds their own little digital heaven and everybody's happy. That's fine. That works.
Right. But if the moment you use a word like prison, got a negative connotation without you even meaning it like that. But there were a couple of those words in there that kind of made me lean towards that more negative bias. But yeah, good that you say that.
It's an amazing science fiction book series, which I've mentioned before. It's called Otherworld, which is about this near future where people have these virtual reality versions of the internet where people live completely alternative lives. And so that's one I recommend to read if you're into this. And then secondly, I mean, if we are living in a simulation, which I wholeheartedly believe, then who gives a shit if we're going one layer deeper?
Yeah, we're just taking the elevator in infinity. Yeah, there you go.
Very inception of you.
Yeah. Hey guys, this was a fantastic conversation. Jelmer, it was a pleasure having you here on the podcast, man.
My pleasure being here. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Any final words from your side, Aragorn?
No, I loved it. I mean, yes, we need to wrap it up. I'm looking at TerraFab here. So if you guys haven't heard about TerraFab, go and check it out. I won't say too much about it now, but yes, we're going to space, ladies and gentlemen. But it was a wonderful episode again. There's almost always so much more to discuss than we have time for.
Yeah. So I hope you as a listener enjoyed it too. The last thing that I want to ask of you is, if you know anybody for the Vibe Coding Masterclass, go to vibecodemasterclass.nl and subscribe or comment or post or share this podcast to anybody that you think could benefit from what we've just discussed. And like they say in the Netherlands,
see you later.
See you later.
Hello, everybody. It's Aragorn here. And if you made it to the end of this episode, which clearly you have, then we want you to know that Patrick and me really consider you a Singularity server. You're part of our community. Now, if you haven't already, that probably means you want to sign up for our weekly newsletter and our bi-weekly podcast on innovationnetwork.substack.com. That's innovationnetwork.substack.com. Now, of course, we're also on your favorite platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon, YouTube, doesn't matter, you can find us there. Another thing I'd really love is if you would leave us your thoughts on everything that we discuss in our newsletter and every episode. And of course, if there are things that you think we really should discuss in future episodes, make sure to leave that in the comments as well. We'll check all of them ourselves, and there's nothing that we love more than to engage with our community, the people in it, and their ideas. We really hope that you enjoyed this and previous episodes, and we really, really look forward to seeing you in the next one. That's it for now, and of course, like they say in the Netherlands, see you later.